Trophy Kids, we are back for the AFC North divisional breakdown. We are very excited to bring this to you. I do apologize ahead of time for the audio issues. We had some issues there. We are going to have it fixed. We understood what happened and are fixing it for the next one, but I do apologize for this one. I hope you still hang in there and listen, though, because there's a lot of really good content in there, especially if you're planning to bet this division moving forward this year. So let's go.
And welcome, Trophy Kids, presented by Bad News Media. It is August 6th, and we are back for another divisional breakdown. How are you doing today, good sir?
I am great. Happy weekend to you.
Oh, it's a beautiful time. You know what does suck, though, about summer? It's the one thing that really puts a damper on my day.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to the store and you pick yourself up a nice watermelon for the weekend, and you come home and you slice it, and it just stinks to high heaven. The amount of watermelon I house, I would think I'd get better at picking, but I did it today on the way home from work. Most disappointing day of my by far.
Yeah, it is a bit of a dagger, especially on these hot summer days. You'll want some refreshing watermelon, maybe a pineapple, and if you don't get a quality fruit, it sucks.
It sucks. Yeah,
it sucks.
Like, I'm not going back to the store, and I'm not gonna have that this weekend, I guess.
Nope, you're shit out of luck.
Shit out of luck. Well,
yeah.
Let's talk about some teams in the AFC North who might be shit out of luck this year. But one team that's coming in with very high expectations. We are going to start with the team that made it to the Super Bowl last year, won the whole AFC to many people's surprise, and that is the Cincinnati Bengals. They are coming in with an over-under total right now of 9.5. They went 10-7 last season. Things have changed dramatically for them. The pressure is on. Last year, they were underdogs coming into the season in 15 of 17 games. This year, they are projected to be an underdog in only 3. How do you see the Cincinnati Bengals coming off what was to many a shocking but exciting season?
I mean, it's so funny, like doing this breakdown this summer compared to last summer and just how much we just crushed the Bengals going in. I mean, I'm still kind of riding the high, I think. I like this team again this season. I like them in this division. I like what they did in the offseason. They addressed some big needs, especially along the offensive line. They brought in Hayden Hurst, who is, he's kind of been a first-round bust so far, but we'll see. You never know. He's still young. I like what they did. One thing I kind of concerns me about the team maybe a little bit, the running game is kind of like Joe Mixon or bust. It's really totally reliant on Joe Mixon. Samaje Perine here and there, but it's Mixon or nothing. And so you really rely on his health there. And then I always have to bring up your favorite, the Zach Taylor factor. I know they went to a Super Bowl, but you never know.
Oh, I am not, as we are well documented on this show, I am not a Zach Taylor fan. I think he outkicked his coverage on a big one last year. Probably a lot, but I think you hit a lot of key points. This team understood the assignment in the offseason. They went out, they upgraded that offensive line. They went out and signed 3 new offensive linemen. Alex Kappa coming over from my Bucks. You got Leo Collins coming on over and Ted Karras. You do pick up 2 tight ends because you do lose CJ Huzmanzada, which is a huge loss. Did I just call him CJ Huzmanzada?
Yeah, I think you brought back Huzmanzada. I think the Bengals fan will love the throwback there, though.
Yes. Great player back in his day. But you lose him, you pick up Hayden Hurst, you get Thaddeus Moss, who has been underwhelming to say the best. But who knows? Maybe he's got some football in him. Hurst is a good football player, quality player, but not living up to that expectation. But it is the Zach Taylor concerns, what that offensive line improvements are going to be, because they have to. Surprising fact about the Bengals I learned in my research. Do you want to guess how, in ranking wise, out of 30 teams, what the Bengals running back room costs?
Makes sense. You're right. 3.1 million.
Oh, I was going to go. They are the 3rd most expensive back.
Are they really?
Running back.
Is Mixon under a huge deal?
Yep. His cap hit
remember.
is 11.4 million this year, 4th most expensive in running backs. They also have Perine on a 1.8 million, 40th most expensive, and a handful of other running backs totaling 17.2 million in a cap charge for 2022.
That is surprising considering, I mean, it's literally Mixon.
Yes. Oh,
It is Mixon.
100%. Now, part of that is that, we'll see what the offensive line upgrades help, because the offensive line last year stunk. And when it came to running backs getting hit back in the backfield, even I was surprised at how bad it was. Out of the 108 running backs with at least 15 attempts, the Bengals running backs ranked 1st, 7th, 28th, and 47th in percentage of runs that were contacted at or behind the line of scrimmage. Chris Evans, 65% of his runs, that was 1st. 7th was Samaje Perine, 58% of his runs. 28th, Joe Mixon at 49% of his runs. And Trayvon Williams, 47% of his runs. The league average was 45. So
that's unbelievable.
Not great. They were also 30th in pass block win rate and allowed the second most sacks per quarterback drop. Only team worse was the Chicago Bears. So the offensive line improvement was much.
Yeah, I mean, you got to hope that offensive line will certainly increase those numbers. And then, I mean, they easily, I'd have to say in the NFL, they have the best, maybe not the best duo at wide receiver, but the best trio at wide receiver. I mean,
agreed.
It's unbelievable. And I think I talked about it last year. I think Tyler Boyd is just the most amazing wide receiver to ever play. Just that he's just totally okay with just basically him getting completely demoted, but he's totally fine with it. Just completely good sport about it. It's unbelievable.
Absolutely balling. I mean, speaking of those days, it's sort of like the Chad Johnson, TJ Huzmanzada, and Chris Henry, may he rest in peace, type of situation there, where the wide receiver room is just loaded. I mean, this is one thing, hand up, I got it wrong. Not completely wrong, because Sewell is doing perfectly fine with the Lions, but I was wrong. Jamar Chase was the absolute right pick here. What he did in transforming this offense explosively was off the charts. And I think even more importantly is those good old yak status we like to look at, because he was only behind Deebo Samuel with wide receivers that had at least 60 receptions in yak last season. And that, I think, is going to be the most important, because they did not see a ton of too high safety shell game. Like, the Chiefs see, the Chargers see a lot of hot, Tampa sees a lot of high of. I do think they're going to get a lot more of that this year. So the running back room has to step up. Wide receivers have to step up. And Jamar Chase and the other wide receivers working underneath all have to step up.
Yep, agreed. And I mean, like you said, Chase, just anytime he gets the ball behind the line of scrimmage, 40 yards downfield, doesn't matter. He's a threat to score. I like the over 9.5. You're giving me 9.5. I got to go over.
Yeah, and the schedule isn't too bad. I mean, they play my NFC South, which outside the Bucs, we're going to talk about that league down the road. But I mean, all of those games are winnable for the Bengals. Yeah. Their division, we're going to go through here. Goods and cons and pros to a lot of teams. Yeah, I don't think it's unreasonable. I liked what they did in the draft. Once again, it comes down to the coaching and whether Zach Taylor continues to be predictable as hell. Continues to do mind-baffling things at times. And if the O-line improvements do improve, because we all watched that Super Bowl, and if that O-line had just did its job to 60% of its ability, Rams aren't winning that Super Bowl, especially on that last play. But yeah, I think it's well doable. I don't think I'm going to take anything right now, because I want to see how training camp develops and all that. But Zach Taylor, he's my eye to watch in his play calling, because well documented, not a fan.
Yeah.
Let's move on to another team, though. A team that last year had arguably maybe the worst injury luck I think I've ever seen in the Baltimore Ravens. This team was decimated by injuries. They opened the season at 9.5 over under. It has moved down from 10.5. They were 8-9 last season. But when you look at the totality of their injuries they dealt with, Gus Edwards, Justin Hill, back-to-back days the week before the start of the season, injured. Ronnie Stanley, left tackle, injured. Nick Boyles goes down before the season starts. You lost Marcus Peters. You lost Chris Wesley, Derek Wolfe, Marlon Humphrey. I mean, the secondary, Derek Wolfe is obviously not in the secondary, but the entire secondary decimated. I mean, they were trying to pull dudes off the street at points in this season to play in that secondary. Completely decimated by injuries. And yet, heading in December, they were the number one seed. Now, the wheels fell off the bus at the end of the year, but they were. So a healthy Baltimore Ravens team coming into this season, how do you see, do they still have the same type of injury luck? Do you think they gel well? How do you kind of see this Ravens season playing out?
I mean, you can't imagine it's going to be as bad as it was last year. I don't even, I mean, there were so many people you named. I don't even know. I don't even think I heard J.K. Dobbins on there. J.K. Dobbins went down too. I mean, it was just crazy.
That was
they
just
had
to
no
name a
running
few.
backs. I mean, they had no running backs other than their quarterback, which is going to anger a lot of people that I said that, but that's just fun. Anyway, I mean, the Ravens are a team that, like, I always look at them and I'm like, they're kind of boring, other than Lamar, of course. And they're kind of boring, but what they do is they win. Lamar Jackson wins football games. He's 37-12 as a starter. I mean, it's you can't doubt them, even if you kind of want to. Even when you're looking at the offense, which outside of Jackson, Dobbins, Edwards, and Mark Andrews, it's not too intimidating. You really are putting a lot of pressure on Bateman to step up. One thing I will say about it is, the schedule starts out pretty daunting, but then the second half of the schedule is just a breeze. So, I mean, I kind of like how that works out, especially because in the beginning of the season, teams, you never really know what's going to happen. So you kind of want those tough games early. So if they go out and they go, 500 through their first 8 games, I like them on the second half of that easy schedule. So, I mean, what are they at? 9.5, you said?
9.5. Yep.
Whew. I don't know if I like them.
It's moved down from 10.5. Opened the season at 10.5. At
10.5.
Or no, sorry. It opened at 9.5. It's moved to 10.5. I apologize. I flipped it. It's at 10.5 right now.
It's at 10.5. Okay. I'm under.
Yeah. It opened 9.5. It flipped to 10.5. My bad. I'm all over the place there. It's at 10.5 right now.
Yeah, I mean, you give me 10.5 now. I mean, I know I just kind of hyped up the team, but 10.5, I mean, they need to go 11-6 now. I mean, I don't see that, but I do actually like them as a team, and I think that is kind of a favorable schedule, just how that whole thing lines up.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good team. I mean, the defense is going to be night and day difference just from a health perspective. And Lamar, I didn't even mention Lamar in those injuries. For the first time in his NFL career, he was really battling sickness and injury. I mean, shouldn't say sickness. The dude's sick like every year, but injuries for sure. And in 4 seasons, he's only missed a total of 4 games due to injuries. All of those were last year. That ankle was the primary thing that was messing with him. So he's been relatively healthy. But the thing that I think I'm just flabbergasted on is the Ravens' unwillingness or inability or whatever it is to provide this man with some type of wide receiver help. Since he has been there, they have spent the second least amount of money at the wide receiver position in the entirety of the NFL. The only team to spend less was the Steelers, who have arguably the greatest scouting department wide receiver room in the history of the NFL or something. I don't know. They just turn out studs all the time. So the only team spending less is the team that gets great value in the draft since Lamar has been there. It baffles the mind. And I think Hollywood Brown, losing him isn't like this crazy detriment. I think he's pretty overrated for the most part.
Yeah.
Still a decent player, but gets a little overhyped there when you look it down. So it's going to be an interesting season. The weapons are the part that
you just look at that offense and you're just like, who is he going to throw it to other than Mark Andrews? And the Ravens have kind of, I mean, other than, maybe like Steve Smith, Anquan Bolden, they kind of made their existence off of this. They just don't bring in like stud wide receivers. And it's very bizarre, but I mean, they're a successful franchise, but it's bizarre.
They do everything else great. I mean, their 2 draft picks in Kyle Hamilton and Lindenbaum are probably going to be Hall of Famers when it's all said and done, because that's just what they do. Like, they just draft fantastic players at the meat and potato positions, but for whatever reason, they can't bring in anybody. And the people they do bring in are like way past their prime, like Des Bryant. Like, what are we doing? Now, Bateman, I think, is a solid option, but there isn't a true 1-in-1 primary 1 wide receiver. And that makes it very difficult for me to say the over at 10.5 in the NFL has value. Like, I'm just staying away from it, but I do think they're going to be a good football team. I think they're going to win games. I just have a lot of concerns. Then again, I mean, Lamar won his MVP with virtually nobody at wide receiver too. So the dude can shred.
Yeah, he can. It's just, you get worried about just, if he does have to throw it. I mean, we know he can throw the ball. Just who's he going to throw it to?
Like, and people blame his accuracy issues and all this stuff. And I was like, all right, well, give him a number 1 guy and let's see if it changed. Like, there are guys in free agency. You haven't spent a nickel at that price point, and you've had the guy on a rookie deal. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Don't get it.
Yeah. Unreal. All right. That's the Ravens. I don't have a lot because they're just they're going to be a solid football team. They're going to win games that they're supposed to win. They're going to probably be in games that are, they should be in. And then some games will be coin flips. Like they're just, I don't know. That's not an elegant way to put it, but they're just a very solid football team, like you said.
Right.
Let's talk about a team that is currently in an absolute dumpster fire of a PR situation and just said, screw morals. I mean, it is the NFL, so I guess we can't be too shocked here. But we are talking about the Cleveland Browns, who went 8-9 last season. Their over-under sits at 8.5. The Deshaun Watson news came out this week. Or was it this? Yeah, this week. God, this week's long. That he's only going to be suspended for 6 games as of now. Then the NFL is appealing that after the judge found that he did have predatory habits, but they were non-violent sexual crimes. I don't know how you judge 6 games off of a man who has money, wealth, and power and is physically daunting, imposing his will in a sexual assault manner, but that's apparently 6 games. That is the franchise. They wanted an adult in the room, and they chose Deshaun Watson, who just seems like a scumbag of a dude. But that is my take on the situation. But we got to talk football team. I'm going to give you time if you want to say much on it as well. But this is the Browns. Their season's a little muddied now because we don't know exactly who we're going to get, when we're going to get them at quarterback, and what that's going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to predict on this team. And yeah, I mean, like you said about Deshaun, interesting decision to bring him in when they did. A lot of money, fully guaranteed. Whatever. It's also the team that, paid David Njoku like he's had good seasons in the NFL. I don't know what this team is doing really. But anyways, so they'll have Brissett for 6 games at least. Who knows? Maybe the whole season. Brissett has, as we know, a lot of experience in the NFL. He pretty much ends up playing no matter where he goes. But recently, and last year in particular, in Miami, it wasn't too pretty. He turns the ball over a good bit. He fumbles a lot. But for a backup, he is who you want. And how the schedule looks, if you are going to lose those 6 games without Deshaun, I mean, you're kind of liking how the schedule looks without him. You got Carolina, Jets, Steelers, Falcons, Chargers, Patriots, and then he's back for the Ravens. And then after that, though, I mean, it's like welcome back to Sean, because I mean he's got Ravens, Bengals, Dolphins, who I think are going to be good, Bills, and then your Bucks, and you got to expect him to have some rust. So I think it's going to be kind of a dumpster fire year for the Browns. I know they still have talent. They still have that running back duo. They brought in Amari Cooper. They have talent on offense, and Deshaun will have his good games, but there's just going to be rust, and I don't see a good season for this team.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Which, karma's a bitch, and I do believe in karma here a little bit. I am a little bit salty over Baker, and we'll talk about Baker with Carolina. Not that he was some like all-pro world quarterback, but I do think they gave him a raw deal last year in the way they handled it, which we'll get into here. But this is a team which I think the most shocking thing about the Deshaun thing, because you knew it was coming, was windows in the NFL close so fast. And this team is primed right now to make a run. And when Baker was healthy the year prior, showed that they could be extremely competitive in doing that. Some other pieces need to fall in place. But this team vaguely reminds me of, 2017 Jaguars, where like the team made it to the AFC Championship. They didn't have like the guy at quarterback. He was like just good enough to get it done in Bortles, but they had, Jalen Ramsey, Calais Campbell, Allen Robinson. Like they were up there competing, and then just like that,
done.
And that's the way the NFL goes. And since in the NFL, only one team since 1994 has won a Super Bowl with a quarterback taking up more than 13% of their cap, and that was Steve Young. Wow. And Deshaun's going to take up well above that. So it's not great. And with the Browns, it was weird last year. They left me head scratching a lot. You brought up David Njoku, who's they spent a ton of money on, but they didn't run a ton of like 2 tight end sets. They went down like in 2020, first year of Kevin Stefanski, they ran 251 pass plays with 2 tight ends on the field. Last season, that dropped to 165, which is odd for 2 reasons. Because your tight end room is, you went out and got Austin Hooper, you have David, you got Harrison Bryant, and 2, Baker is like, his numbers are way different when there's 2 tight ends on the field in a positive direction than when they're not. Like, it's completely night and day different. So that drop felt really weird.
Yeah, I mean, there was a reason Beckham and Landry hated him. He didn't throw the ball.
True, very true. But that's because he liked his tight end play.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
I don't know why you dropped away from that in a way.
Right.
Because that's your better brother. And then they also went Kevin Stefanski, like, way jacked up his shotgun numbers. They were 66% in 2020, jacked him up to 74% in 2021. Early downs, he was 65%, which was up from 55% the year before. Like, it felt like Kevin Stefanski, honestly, like, was like, you know what? We had a really successful in 2020. Let's do the exact opposite and not build on that in 2021. And oh yeah, our quarterback is barely walking out there with all his injuries, but let's do nothing to help him. So it was kind of left me scratching. And that's why I'm like, I don't even know what we're going to get this year. I don't know where Kevin Stefanski's at.
Yeah, and maybe I know I played Kareem Hunt, missed quite a few games last year, but just remember, they have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Hand the ball off. Like,
yes.
What are you doing?
Like, what are we doing? It's just, I don't know. The defense is going to be good. I mean, you got Myles Garrett. Clowney had somewhat of a resurrection last year. I mean, still not like a stud, but became more reliable of a pass rusher last season for them. Ward's really good in coverage. So it's a fine football team, but I just see this, like, I think the Deshaun Watson move, when it's all said and done, is just going to be looked at as like, that was the downfall. Like, the Browns had this moment where you're like, oh my God, the Browns are going to be the Browns anymore. And then they just flipped right back.
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't played a live football game in, a season and a half. It's been a long time, like since 2020. It was a long time ago.
And if that 6-game suspension, like you said, sticks and he comes back,
welcome back.
Welcome back to the NFL. Not only do I think there's a few guys that may put a little extra mustard on a hit here and there this season, but I mean, and that was the thing that I think a lot of people noticed, was like, this kind of smells fishy. The schedule is a piece of cake. I think it's the easiest schedule in the NFL, like weeks 1 through 6, and then immediately just a banger from there on out.
Yeah, tough.
So yeah, I think the Browns they're heading in the wrong direction. Let's talk about another team that's banking on their future, in the Pittsburg Steelers. This is a team that has been Mr. Consistent. This is a team that just wins all the time. They went from Hall of Fame head coach to another Hall of Fame head coach in Mike Tomlin, who is just an absolute ace. This man does not know how to lose. I mean, he has yet to have a losing season in Pittsburgh, but this season will test him more than any season to date. They open at their over-under at 7.5. They were 9-7 last year. How do you see the Pittsburgh Steelers recovering from losing their cornerstone in Ben Roethlisberger in really a somewhat deteriorated team?
Yeah, I mean, you pretty much described this team so well. I mean, they're like the Ravens, just a little better. I mean, like, they're very similar. The two organizations are so similar, where it's just consistency, well run, long tenure at head coach. Like, it's crazy. And it's hard for me, as much as I want to say like they're done. I can't say it yet. But one thing that we do know is it's a quarterback driven league. And even though Ben last year was not Ben, he still, had the mind of Ben. So he kind of knew what to do and how to play and how to win. And I just don't trust Mitch Trubisky or Mason Rudolph or whoever is going to be starting at quarterback to really get the W's like Ben was getting. But you still gotta like the pieces on the team. I mean, you gotta imagine they're going to give Najee Harris as many carries as he can possibly handle. I mean, I love him in terms of fantasy this year. They just re-signed Deontay Johnson. Chase Claypool is awesome. And then you look at the defense, and then they just have names everywhere. But even though they had these names everywhere last year, you could run all over this team. So you got to be a little concerned about that. You got to hope they kind of toughen up around there. But until I see them really fall off. I can't say they'll probably be a 7-8 win team. Maybe Mike Tomlin will finally not have a 500 or better record.
If there's a year that's going to happen, I think it's this one, because the biggest glaring concern is that offensive line. Like the Ravens, they have really done nothing to address this problem. They've run the opposite direction. Ravens are like, we have a giant hole wide receiver, let's ignore it. And the Steelers have done the same with the O-line. The O-line last year was 31st in pass block win rate, 30th in run block win rate. They were the third worst NFL team when it came to their running backs getting hit behind the line of contact for an average 0.88 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. That was third worst. And yet they faced almost zero, not zero. They faced 7+ man boxes at a 52.9% rate. League average is 73. So they didn't face heavy boxes, and their running backs were still getting torn up in the backfield. They are going to face the third toughest schedule of rush defense this year. So that is a very glaring concern. Now, in their defense, because they brought back 4 of the 5 stars from last year, 2 of those guys were rookies. So the idea that they're going to have some growth is there, but man, do they really need to have that? Because if they don't, it's right now the cheapest O-line in the NFL. Whoever they put back there, quarterback, is going to have a damn tough time getting the ball out, which I guess is the question. How do you handle that quarterback situation? Is this one where you say, hey, the offensive line is terrible or could be terrible. Let's just throw Mitch out there, not kill Kenny in the early part of the season, let him ease into it, maybe target like a later season entry? Or do you go, hey, this is Kenny's the future, we're starting him right away, or we're opening it up to a complete battle in training camp, best man wins, with Kenny obviously eventually taking over?
I like the idea of keeping Kenny on the bench for a little bit. Ideally, obviously, this didn't happen. Ideally, Kenny was drafted last year, and he could have watched Ben, get rid of the ball in 0.5 seconds every single play because he had no other decision. But yeah, I think you let Mitch go out there. Mitch is athletic. He can run around at least a little bit, run for his life. And then, if the wheels start falling off, late October, November time, you want to see what the rookies got, I'd throw them in there. But I don't think you could throw them out there right from the start. Just not for this team. I don't think the expectations are there.
I'm with you. I think you don't throw them. I mean, you're facing the Bengals right off the bat. Then you get Pats, Browns, Jets, Bills, Bucks. That's a tough 3-game stretch of defenses that can get after you. And are going to present some challenges. And so, I'd maybe look for a smoother landing spot for him in his young career and not get him murdered. But this is a team, like you said, that's going to run the ball a lot, I think. I mean, Matt Canada loves to run the ball, the offensive coordinator. They clearly prioritize that because last year when they had the opportunity to go draft a lineman early, they decided to get Najee Harris, who is a very quality back and has a bright future ahead of him, I think. But it's just like all signals load that, hey, defense is going to win us football games this year, which they have a great defense up front. I mean, very talented defense. Run the ball and just long-term development. I think this season is, hey, we're not winning it all this season. Let's grow for the future type of deal. But if you're willing to bet on Mike Tomlin's downfall, I think this is the year you might push your chips into the middle and say, this is the year he's going below 500 for the first time in his career.
Yep, finally. I think it'll finally happen.
Yeah, which is one of the wildest stats in sports. To be coaching that long, 12 years, I think now, and he has yet to have a losing season in the NFL. I mean, mind-boggling. Yeah, this will be his 13th season. Or no, 15th. Sorry. He's been 15 years in the league. This will be his 16th season. Never had a losing season.
I think Ron Rivera's had 5 out of the last 6 are losing seasons.
It's insane. Like, nuts.
Wild.
Absolutely crazy. All righty. That does it for our AFC North preview. Any final notes before we wrap this up?
Nothing major. I mean, other than the Bengals, I really don't like this division.
I don't either. I think long term, there's some hope here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I got it. Before we leave, do you want to give are you ready to give the take as to Lamar's future that you texted out the other week? Or do we want to hold that back?
Gosh, I forgot even what I said. Oh, yeah. Oh, I personally think Lamar's going to Miami. That's just, it's perfect.
Would be unbelievable. Could you imagine?
Perfect.
He goes from the Ravens, who have given him nothing at wide receiver, to Tyreek Hill and Waddle out there.
He's a Florida guy himself. He's made for Miami.
That would be unreal if that happened. I mean, the fact they haven't gotten a deal done yet is kind of like, what are you doing here, guys?
So much of it really just relies on Tua and what Tua does.
Yeah.
And it's just like, if Tua is just like average, he's done.
Oh, with those weapons, he can't afford to be average. And we will talk about that, but whoa, man. Yeah, this is a division that there's potential here long-term, but outside of the Bengals, this season is going to be, it's going to be a very interesting one to see how it develops. Because a lot of teams, there are some like really big glaring holes. That's like, I don't know how you make it through a 16-game schedule with these very glaring holes.
Yep. And I think a lot of their games, like against each other, I think there should be like just slugfest type of games. They're kind of boring, just slugfest type things.
It's like Iowa versus Wisconsin every week.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Slugfest.
Yes.
All righty. That'll do it for us this week. And as always, peace.